After being publicly humiliated for a mistake I didn't make, it was like the ground had been ripped out from under my feet. David Barlow, my tyrannical boss, used me as a scapegoat to hide his own crimes, and the feeling of injustice burned inside me. I clearly remember the moment I was suspended and my reputation was destroyed in front of everyone. The look of contempt and distrust from my colleagues was unbearable. But, instead of giving in to despair, I decided to fight and prove my innocence. That fateful morning, David called an emergency meeting. I didn't know what to expect, but I certainly wasn't prepared for what was coming. "Sean Parker," he began, with a grave tone and a look of mock disappointment on his face. "We discovered a serious financial error, and all the evidence points to you." My heart raced. "That's a mistake, David." "I would never do something like that," I protested, trying to remain calm. He just shook his head theatrically. "Unfortunately, we have no choice but to suspend you while we investigate this further." The room fell dead silent. I could feel the eyes on me, judgmental and full of distrust. "But I'm innocent," I insisted, my voice shaking. "You are making a big mistake." David gave a cold smile. "We'll see what the investigation reveals. Until then, you're suspended, and I hope you use this time to reflect on your actions." I left the room feeling like all my years of hard work and dedication had been thrown away. But the public humiliation was just the beginning. Minutes later, I received an email from David, formalizing my suspension and detailing the allegations against me. It was a complete dossier, full of manipulated numbers and reports. They all seemed to directly incriminate me. I knew David had set this all up, but proving it would be a monumental task. I could have accepted my fate, but something inside me wouldn't allow it. I couldn't let him get away with it. I remembered a conversation I had months ago with Lisa, the IT analyst. She was always very perceptive and had already mentioned some suspicions about David's activities. I decided to look for her. "Lisa, do you have a minute?" I asked, finding her in the hallway. She looked at me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "Of course, Sean. What's going on?" I explained the situation quickly, and her expression grew more serious with each word. "I knew there was something wrong with David," she said finally. "I always suspected he was involved in something dirty, but I never had concrete proof." "I need your help," I asked desperately. "Can you help me prove that he set this all up against me?" She hesitated for a moment, but then nodded. "I'll help you, Sean. Let's take down this tyrant together." With Lisa's help, we began digging into the company's systems. She used her hacking skills to access confidential information, and little by little we began to gather evidence. We discovered that David was involved in an embezzlement scheme that involved senior executives and even board members. On a particularly tense night, Lisa called me into her office. "Sean, you have to see this," she said, her eyes shining with excitement and anxiety. I looked at the computer screen and saw a series of incriminating emails between David and other executives. "This is pure gold," I muttered, feeling a mixture of relief and anger. "Finally, we have something concrete." But we knew this was just the beginning. With the evidence in hand, my determination only grew. I was ready to face any threat, any blackmail, to clear my name and expose David Barlow's true intentions. The fight was just beginning, and I wouldn't stop until justice was served. After the public humiliation and unfair suspension, I knew I couldn't simply accept being the scapegoat for David Barlow's crimes. I decided it was time to investigate on my own and find out what was really going on. My suspicions were soon confirmed when I started analyzing the company's financial data. There was something very wrong here, and I was determined to find out what it was. It was then that I approached Lisa, the IT analyst. I knew that if anyone could help me find the evidence I needed, it was her. Lisa has always been known for her ability to navigate the most complex systems and find information that no one else could. "Lisa, I need your help," he said, approaching her in the company cafeteria. "Of course, Sean." "What's going on?" she asked, looking up from her laptop. "I have been wrongfully accused of a serious financial error." David is behind it, and I am almost certain he is involved in illicit activities. I need proof to clear my name and put an end to him." Lisa frowned, clearly interested. "I've always suspected there was something wrong with David. He's very controlling and always seems to know more than he should. What do you have in mind?" "I need you to use your skills to access confidential company information. We need concrete proof of his involvement in any illegal activity." She considered it for a moment, then nodded. "All right, I'm in. But we need to be extremely careful. If we get caught, we'll both be in serious trouble." I couldn't agree more. "I understand. Let's do this discreetly." Over the next few days, Lisa began working in secret, using her hacking skills to access the company's systems. She managed to break into David and other executives' email accounts, looking for anything that could incriminate them. One night while we were at the office, she called me into her cubicle. "Sean, I think I found something." I approached, anxious. "What is it?" She pointed to the computer screen, where there was a series of emails between David and other executives. "Look at this. They are discussing transfers of large sums of money to offshore accounts. It appears they are embezzling company funds." My heart raced. This is exactly what we need. But how can we use this without getting caught? Lisa looked at me with determination. "We will copy these emails and store them in a secure location. We need more proof, but this is a good start." As the days passed, Lisa and I continued to investigate. She was able to access confidential documents that showed suspicious financial transactions. Each new discovery increased our determination to expose David. One night, as we were reviewing documents, Lisa paused and looked at me seriously. "Sean, you are aware of the risk we are taking, right? If David finds out what we are doing, he will not hesitate to destroy us." I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of responsibility. "I know, Lisa. But we can't let him continue to do this. We need to expose the truth, not only to clear my name, but to protect the company and everyone who works here." She nodded, a gleam of determination in her eyes. "Then let's do this. Let's take down David Barlow." With Lisa by my side, I felt like we had a real chance of success. We knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but we were prepared to face any obstacle. Our mission was just beginning, and we were ready for anything that came our way. Greg, a veteran accountant at the company, also reveals to me that there are financial inconsistencies in the records. He invited me to the cafeteria for a chat, away from the watchful eyes of David and other executives. It was an ordinary afternoon, but the tension in the air was palpable. Greg, with his gray hair and discerning eyes, looked like he had been carrying a burden for a long time. "Sean, we need to talk. I discovered something that could change everything," he began, his voice low and serious. "I already suspected something was wrong, but what did you find, Greg?" I asked, eager for any clue that could help me prove my innocence. Greg showed me some financial documents, pointing out several inconsistencies in the transactions. There were amounts that simply didn't make sense, transfers to unknown accounts and inflated expenses. He explained that he had been monitoring these anomalies for months, but didn't know who to trust until now. "Look, Sean, I know you were wrongly accused. I was there the day of the meeting and I saw the way David humiliated you. Ever since then, I've been looking for a way to expose what's really going on here," Greg said, with a look of determination. From that moment on, Greg and I started working together. He used his vast experience to thoroughly analyze each financial document while I looked for ways to cross-reference this information with other clues that Lisa, the IT analyst, was hacking. One night we were in Greg's office, surrounded by stacks of papers and computer screens flashing with spreadsheets. Greg was visibly tired, but he wasn't giving up. "This right here, Sean, look at this." He pointed to a series of transactions that appeared to be part of an embezzlement scheme. "These transfers are to offshore accounts. I have no doubt that David is behind this." At that moment, Lisa entered the room with a laptop in her hands. "I managed to access some important emails," she said, with a mischievous smile. You won't believe what I found. She showed us a series of correspondences between David and other executives, discussing ways to embezzle money and cover their tracks. It was the proof we needed, but we knew that alone was not enough. We needed more evidence to build a solid case. That's a good start, Lisa, I said, feeling a ray of hope. But we need more. Greg, keep analyzing these documents. Lisa, see if you can hack more systems. We need all the proof we can get. The following days were intense. Greg and I spent hours reviewing documents, cross-referencing information, and putting the pieces of the puzzle together. The more we investigated, the more evident David's scheme became. He wasn't just embezzling funds, there were accomplices on the board and senior executives involved. One night, after hours of work, Greg lowered his glasses and sighed. Sean, I think we have enough to start building the case. But you need to be careful. David won't give up easily. I know, Greg. I'll be cautious. But I won't stop until the truth comes out. Greg nodded, visibly worried. Just be careful, Sean. David is dangerous, and he's already shown that he doesn't hesitate to use any means to protect himself. That night was a milestone in our investigation. With Greg and Lisa's help, we were one step closer to exposing David Barlow's dark secrets. The journey was still far from over, but for the first time, I felt that justice could prevail. As we investigated, the seriousness of the situation became increasingly evident. David Barlow was not acting alone, he had accomplices on the board. With each new discovery, the risks increased exponentially. I received anonymous intimidating messages on my cell phone, veiled threats that aimed to make me give up. Furthermore, I began to notice that I was being followed. One night, while driving home, a black car with tinted windows was parked across the street. When I passed, he took off and started following me. My heart raced, but I decided to stay calm and keep walking, trying to memorize the sign. Lisa, we need to talk, I said, as soon as I entered the private room where we were secretly meeting. She looked at me with a worried expression. What happened, Sean? I'm getting threats. Messages on my cell phone, and last night I was followed by a black car. I think they know we're investigating. Lisa frowned. This is serious. We need to be more careful. I'll see if I can track these messages and find out who's sending them. Thank you, Lisa. I don't know what I would do without you and Greg. Greg, who was analyzing some financial documents on the side, looked up. We're in this together, Sean. Let's find out who's behind this and put an end to this scheme. We continued our work despite the growing danger. Each new piece of the puzzle revealed more about the extent of the corruption. We discovered that David was diverting large amounts of money to offshore accounts, and that some board members were taking bribes to turn a blind eye. Look at this, Lisa said one day, her eyes shining with excitement. I managed to hack an email between David and one of the directors. They are discussing how to cover up a misappropriation of funds. This is pure gold, Greg said, picking up the laptop to read the message. With this evidence, we can take them down. But the joy was brief. The next day, as Lisa attempted to transfer more compromising files to a secure location, her access was blocked. She received a threatening message from David, which said, I know what you are doing. Stop now or face the consequences. This is getting more and more dangerous, Lisa said, visibly shaken. But I won't give up. They can't intimidate us. I admired your courage. We're all in this together. We can't let them win. The threats continued. One night I received an anonymous call. The voice on the other end was cold and threatening. If you keep this up, you'll regret it. Think about your family. I hung up the phone, took a deep breath and called Julia. She was also being threatened, but her determination was unshakable. Sean, we can't let them intimidate us. We need to keep going. You're right, Julia. Let's go all the way. Tension was in the air. We were being followed, threatened and watched, but our determination only grew. We knew we were close to uncovering the whole truth and exposing David and his accomplices. "Sean, we need a plan," Greg said one day as we reviewed the compromising financial documents. "We need to ensure that this evidence reaches the board safely and that everyone involved is held accountable." "I agree," I replied. "We will come up with a detailed plan and make sure nothing goes wrong. We are close to the end, and we cannot fail now." Despite the threats and the growing danger, we continued our investigation. We knew the truth was within our reach and that with courage and determination we could expose David and end his tyranny. Every day, we got closer to clearing my name and changing the company's toxic culture once and for all. Julia, a coworker who also suffered at David's hands, joins the group. It provides valuable information about the company's internal operations and helps identify those involved in the scheme. Sean and Julia develop a close relationship based on mutual trust. I was sitting in the company cafeteria, still processing the latest discoveries we'd made about David and his cronies, when Julia approached with a determined look. She was always a quiet presence in the office, but I knew that, like me, she had suffered at David's hands. "Sean, can I sit down?" she asked, with a tone of voice that mixed firmness and solidarity. "Of course, Julia. Sit down," I replied, gesturing to the chair in front of me. She sat down and, bluntly, began to speak. "I know what you're doing. And I want to help." Surprised, I raised my eyebrows. "You know? Like this?" Julia looked at me seriously. "I know you're investigating David. And I know he's to blame for a lot more than you realize. I was also wronged by him. He publicly humiliated me in a meeting, blaming me for a mistake he himself made. I want to see him pay for everything." The intensity in his voice was undeniable. I knew Julia was a valuable ally, and her determination only reinforced my desire to move forward. "So, what do you have in mind?" I asked. Julia smiled slightly, as if she already had everything planned. "I have access to some internal documents and information about the company's operations that may be useful. David trusts me enough to keep me close, but not enough to suspect me of being against him. We can use this to our advantage." At that moment, I realized that Julia would be essential to our mission. We agreed to meet that evening, after work, to discuss the details. At the end of the day, we gathered in Greg's small office, which was becoming our makeshift headquarters. Lisa was already there, typing furiously on her laptop, while Greg reviewed more financial documents. "Julia, I'm glad you came," Lisa said, looking over her glasses. "We need all the help we can get," Greg added, without looking up from the papers. Julia nodded and began to explain what she knew about the company's internal operations. She revealed that David had a scheme to embezzle funds that involved not only him, but also several members of the board. He used fake accounts and shell companies to launder the money, and Julia had access to some of the emails and documents that could prove this. "This is pure gold," Greg said, finally looking up from the documents. "If we can piece this together with the data Lisa is hacking, we'll have a solid case." Lisa agreed, but warned. "We need to be quick. Every day that passes, we take more risks. And David won't hesitate to harm us if he finds out what we're doing." Julia looked directly at me, and for the first time that night, I saw a gleam of concern in her eyes. "And Sean, we need to decide who we can trust. There are many people involved, and any false step could cost us dearly." I knew she was right. Our investigation was becoming increasingly dangerous, and the threats were real. But with Julia by our side, we had a greater chance of success. The trust we were building was a powerful weapon against David and his regime of tyranny. "I agree, Julia," I replied. "Let's be cautious and strategic. And, above all, let's protect each other." With this promise, our group was more united than ever. The fight for the truth was just beginning, but with allies like Julia, Lisa, and Greg, I knew we had a real chance of winning. And, most importantly, to finally expose David and change our company's toxic culture. Lisa manages to hack the company's email system and finds compromising correspondence between David and the other executives. However, when she tries to transfer the files to a safe location, she is discovered and her access is blocked. Lisa is threatened with dismissal, but remains firm by Sean's side. I was anxious when Lisa walked into my office, her face pale as a ghost. She sat in the chair across from my desk and looked at me with an expression of pure determination, but also fear. "Sean, I got access to the email system," she began, taking a deep breath. "I found correspondence between David and the other executives. They are clearly discussing the embezzlement of funds and how they are manipulating financial records." My heart raced. Finally, we had the evidence we needed. But I could tell there was something wrong by Lisa's expression. "That's great, Lisa, but you seem worried. What happened?" I asked, trying to remain calm. She hesitated before answering. "When I was transferring the files to a safe location, they discovered me. My access was blocked and I received a warning message. David already knows what I'm doing. I was called to a meeting with the IT department and management tomorrow. I think they're going to try to fire me." A wave of anger and frustration washed over me. David was willing to do anything to protect his secrets, even destroy the career of one of our best employees. "We can't let that happen," I declared, slamming my hand on the table. "Not after everything you did to help us." Lisa nodded, her eyes shining with determination. "I won't give up, Sean. I'm by your side. We just need a plan to save these files and make sure David can't get away with this." We spent the entire night devising a plan to recover the files and protect them. Lisa suggested that Greg, with his accounting experience and knowledge of the company's systems, could help us find a way to access the files without being detected. The next morning, before Lisa's meeting, we met in Greg's office. He was worried but determined to help us. "Lisa, we need to do this quickly and discreetly," Greg said, analyzing the data she had obtained. "If David already knows what we're doing, he'll try to erase any trace of these correspondences." Lisa began working on a contingency plan to access the company's backup servers, while Greg monitored financial records in real time to see if there were any suspicious movements. I was nervous, but I couldn't help but feel hopeful. We were close to exposing the truth. While Lisa was in the meeting, Greg and I stayed in the room, watching for any signs of trouble. When she returned, she looked exhausted but victorious. "They tried to intimidate me. They said I could be fired for violating the company's security," Lisa said, sitting down heavily. "But I used some legal arguments about whistleblower protection and managed to buy some time. We have to act quickly before they do something more drastic." Lisa immediately returned to work, and this time Greg and I stood by her side to ensure she had all the support she needed. The tension was palpable, and every second felt like an eternity. "I achieved!" Lisa exclaimed suddenly. "The files are safe. Now we have all the proof we need." It was a moment of pure euphoria. We knew the battle wasn't over yet, but we had taken a big step. Lisa, even when faced with the threat of losing her job, had stood her ground and achieved what seemed impossible. "Lisa, you were amazing," I said, sincerely grateful. "We still have a long way to go, but with this evidence, we have a real chance of taking down David and clearing our name." She smiled, exhausted but satisfied. "We're in this together, Sean. Let's end this tyranny and change this company forever." At that moment, I felt that, despite all the difficulties, we were on the right path. And with Lisa, Greg and Julia by my side, I knew we could face any challenge. After being publicly humiliated for a mistake I didn't make, I decided it was time to expose my boss, David Barlow's true intentions. Determined to clear my name, I embarked on a dangerous journey to reveal David's dark secrets and end his regime of office tyranny. With unexpected help from colleagues such as astute IT analyst Lisa and veteran accountant Greg, I uncovered a misappropriation scheme involving senior executives and even board members. As the investigation progressed, I faced threats and blackmail, while Lisa tried to hack systems to obtain evidence and Greg discovered compromising financial documents. Additionally, I dealt with my relationship with Julia, a colleague who also suffered at David's hands, and together, we needed to decide who to trust. The fight for the truth turned out to be more complex and dangerous than I imagined, but I was determined to not only clear my name but also change the company's toxic culture once and for all. Greg and I were in the office, immersed in a sea of financial documents. He flipped through a stack of sheets with an attentive gaze, while I frantically typed on my laptop, trying to organize the information we had gathered up to that point. "Sean, look at this." Greg caught my eye, pushing a document toward me. "These transactions here. They don't make sense. These are large amounts of money being transferred to offshore accounts." I took the paper and looked at the transactions. "That's exactly what we were looking for," I replied, feeling a rush of adrenaline. "We have to copy these documents before anyone notices." Greg nodded in agreement. "I'll use the copier in the next room. Keep an eye out for any strange movement." As Greg headed to the copier, I continued to review the documents, trying to absorb as much information as possible. The tension in the air was palpable, and I knew we were in dangerous territory. Suddenly, I heard the sound of heavy footsteps in the hallway. I looked at the door and saw two company security guards approaching. "Greg, we have company," I whispered, trying not to panic. Greg quickly returned to the room, copies of the documents in hand. "We have to get out of here, now." Without hesitation, I took the documents and placed them in my briefcase. We left the room and headed towards the emergency exit, but the security guards saw us and started chasing us. "Hey, you two! Stop right there," one of the security guards shouted. "Come on, Greg, quick," I said, pulling him by the arm as we ran through the company halls. We managed to reach the emergency stairs and quickly went down, our hearts beating fast. When we finally left the building, we stopped to catch our breath. "That was close," Greg said, panting. "Yes, but now we know we are being watched," I replied. "We have to be more careful from now on." Greg nodded. "We have to find a safe place to keep these documents. Home is not an option. They could follow us there." I thought for a moment and then I had an idea. "I know a place. A friend of mine has an office we can use temporarily. It's discreet and no one will find us there." Greg agreed and we headed to my friend's office. On the way, I called Lisa and Julia to let them know what had happened. "Lisa, we got the documents, but we were chased by security," I explained. "Understood, Sean. I will reinforce the security of our systems and ensure that all information is protected," Lisa replied, determined. Julia was also worried. "Sean, are you guys okay? I need you to stay safe. We can't lose anyone right now." "We're fine, Julia. We just need to be more careful. Let's meet at my friend's office and continue the investigation from there." We arrived at my friend's office and kept the documents in a safe place. I knew we were running out of time, but I also knew that together, Lisa, Greg, Julia and we could expose David and his accomplices. The fight for the truth was just beginning, and I was more determined than ever to clear my name and change the company's toxic culture. As we prepared to continue the investigation, I felt a surge of hope. We were closer to the truth, and with each step, we were closer to overthrowing David Barlow and ending his tyranny. After weeks of intense investigation, Lisa, Greg, Julia and I finally had the evidence needed to expose David Barlow and his accomplices. Our plan was simple but risky. During the next board meeting, we would present all the evidence incriminating David and his allies. The idea was to ensure that the evidence was so irrefutable that the board would have no choice but to take action against him. "We have to make sure no details are left out," Lisa said, as we reviewed the exams for the last time in the empty conference room. "We need to be meticulous. We cannot allow David to find any loophole to defend himself." "I agree," I replied. "Greg, can you ensure that the financial documents are organized chronologically? We need to clearly show the trail of embezzlement." Greg nodded. "I'm already on it, Sean. I'm going to make sure everything is in order. We can't make any mistakes now." Julia was sitting next to me, reviewing the list of those involved in the scheme. "Sean, are you sure we should go through with this? I know it's the right thing to do, but the consequences could be dangerous." I looked into her eyes and saw sincere concern. "Julia, we have no other choice. If we let this go, David will continue to destroy lives and the company will sink even further. We need to do this not just for ourselves, but for all the other employees suffering under his regime." On the morning of the meeting, I felt a mix of nervousness and determination. We were about to face one of the most powerful men in the company, and we knew he wouldn't back down easily. Dressed formally, with documents and evidence meticulously organized in a folder, I headed to the conference room. However, upon entering the building, I noticed something strange. Two men I had never seen before stood at the entrance, watching my every move. I tried to ignore it, but my instinct told me something was wrong. As I approached the elevator, one of them approached. "Mr. Parker, we need you to accompany us," the man said, firmly and uncompromisingly. "Sorry, but I'm late for an important meeting," I replied, trying to walk away. "It's not a request," he snapped, grabbing my arm. Before I could react, I was pulled into a deserted hallway and thrown into a black car waiting outside. "Is this a kidnapping?" I asked, struggling to free myself. "You got into something where you shouldn't have," replied the other man, as the car began to move. "David Barlow doesn't like trouble." Trying to stay calm, I thought about Lisa, Greg, and Julia. They needed to continue with the plan without me. I had to find a way out of this situation. After what seemed like hours, the car stopped at an abandoned warehouse. I was dragged inside and tied to a chair. David Barlow was there, a cold smile on his face. Sean, did you really think you could take me down so easily?" he said, approaching. "You are an insignificant insect. I am untouchable. You're not going to get away with this, David." "The evidence is irrefutable," I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. David laughed. "Evidence? Without you, no one will have the courage to present it. And even if they try, I will know first and ensure they are silenced." As he spoke, he couldn't help but think about Lisa and her incredible talent and technology. If anyone could track my location and organize a rescue, it was her. And Julia, with her determination, would certainly not give up on me. Suddenly, my thoughts were interrupted by the sound of fast approaching footsteps. The warehouse door was kicked down, and before David could react, Lisa and Julia emerged, followed by Greg and some loyal security guards. "Release him now," cried Julia, with a courage that surprised me. David's henchmen hesitated, and that was the cue. Lisa needed to hack the warehouse's security system, turning off the cameras and locking the doors. "You're finished, David," she said, with unshakable confidence. Amidst the chaos, I managed to free myself with Greg's help. We quickly left the warehouse and headed back to the company. The board meeting was about to begin, and now we were more determined than ever to expose the truth. We entered the conference room, interrupting the meeting already in progress. Surprised looks turned to us, but I didn't hesitate. I put the evidence on the table and started talking. "Gentlemen, ladies, I ask for your attention. What we have here will change the history of this company. It is time to end the tyranny of David Barlow and restore the integrity of this place." And so, with the help of my loyal and courageous colleagues, I presented all the evidence we had collected. The board was shocked, and David, unable to defend himself, was finally exposed for his crimes. When I found myself trapped in that dark, damp warehouse, my mind couldn't stop thinking about how everything had gotten to that point. I knew David Barlow would play dirty, but I didn't imagine he would go to the extreme of kidnapping me. However, the thought of Lisa, Greg, and Julia going through with the plan gave me the strength to hold on. I knew they wouldn't give up on me that easily. As I tried to free myself from the ropes that held me, I heard footsteps approaching. My breathing quickened and my heart pounded. Could it be one of David's henchmen? Or maybe someone coming to rescue me? The sound of the door opening echoed through the warehouse, and I held my breath. "Sean!" Julia's voice was like a bomb for my ears. Julia? How did you find me? I asked, my voice hoarse with relief and surprise. She knelt beside me, skillfully beginning to untie the ropes. Lisa managed to track your cell phone. It was risky work, but she's good at what she does. And I couldn't leave you here, she replied, with determination in her eyes. What about the meeting? I asked, worried. Greg and Lisa are taking care of it. We have to get out of here now. I managed to free myself completely, and together we left the warehouse, careful not to be seen by David's henchmen. Julia led me to a car parked nearby, where Lisa was behind the wheel. We have to be quick. The meeting starts in 20 minutes, Lisa said, as I got into the car. Did you get the evidence? I asked. Yes, but it was close. David almost figured it all out. Come on, we have little time, Lisa replied, accelerating the car. As we drove to the company headquarters, I felt a mixture of nervousness and hope. I knew this was our only chance to expose David and clear my name. We arrived at the company a few minutes before the meeting started. Greg was waiting for us at the entrance, with a serious expression. Everything is ready. We have to be careful. David will try to stop us no matter what, he said, handing me a folder with the incriminating documents. We entered the meeting room, where the board was already present. David looked at us with surprise and anger, but maintained his composure. What does that mean, Sean? I thought you were suspended, he said, trying to maintain control of the situation. I'm here to expose the truth, David. And I have proof, I replied, opening the folder and distributing the documents across the table. Lisa connected her laptop to the projector, displaying the compromising emails she had hacked. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the information. This is absurd, David shouted, getting up from his chair. These are false accusations. He's trying to sabotage the company. Greg then took the floor. These documents clearly show the embezzlement of funds and suspicious transactions. We have enough evidence to launch a formal investigation. The board murmured in shock. Finally, the company president stood up. David, you are suspended immediately. We will begin an internal investigation and, if these accusations are confirmed, you will be held legally responsible, he declared firmly. David tried to argue, but his words fell on deaf ears. The meeting ended with the decision to fire David and begin the investigation. I felt a huge weight lifting off my shoulders. I looked at Lisa, Greg, and Julia, and a feeling of gratitude and relief filled me. We did it, said Julia, with a smile. Yes, we did it, I replied, hugging her. Finally, the truth came out. David was arrested, and his accomplices were exposed. My reputation was restored, and I received a public retraction and a promotion. The company's toxic culture began to change, and I knew we had made a difference. With Julia by my side, I looked to the future with hope and determination. In the following days, the company began to implement more transparent and fair policies. Lisa, Greg, and Julia, myself, continued to work together, determined to ensure the company became a place where integrity and fairness prevailed. And so, a new era began, not only for the company, but for all of us. Finally, the day of the meeting had arrived. I felt a mix of nervousness and determination as I entered the conference room, accompanied by Lisa, Greg, and Julia. We knew this was our last chance to expose David and his accomplices, and we couldn't fail. The room was full of executives, all the board members and, of course, David himself, who watched us with a look of disdain. I took a deep breath and started the presentation. Gentlemen and ladies of the board, thank you for giving us this time. Today, we have some critical revelations to make about the financial management of this company and the involvement of certain executives in illicit activities. David gave a sarcastic laugh. This is ridiculous, Sean. You've caused enough trouble. Why don't you just give up? I ignored the provocation and continued. Lisa connected her laptop to the projector and began displaying the compromising emails she had found. These are exchanges of messages between David and other executives, clearly discussing the embezzlement of funds. Here, for example, is a message from David to the chief financial officer, instructing him to transfer a significant amount to an offshore account. The room fell silent, and I could see the shock on the directors' faces. Greg then presented the financial documents he had copied. These are the suspicious transactions we found. As you can see, there are a series of embezzlements totaling millions of dollars, all directed to accounts that are not part of our official records. David started to sweat. This is a scam. All fabricated. They can't be trusted. Julia, who until then had remained silent, stood up and looked directly at David. David, everyone here knows how manipulative you are. I myself was a victim of your tactics. But today, the truth finally came out. The directors began to murmur among themselves, and the chairman of the board, Mr. Thompson, stood up. This is extremely serious. We need to take immediate action. David tried to defend himself. You can't do that. You're making a mistake. No, David, I said, feeling a surge of courage. The only mistake was believing that you could continue your scams with impunity. But that ends today. Mr. Thompson signaled to the security guards, who approached David. David Barlow, you are dismissed and will be turned over to the authorities for a full investigation. As for the others involved, they will also be suspended until the internal investigation is completed. The expressions of shock and fear on David's accomplices were almost palpable. As he was escorted out of the room, I felt a huge weight lift off my shoulders. Finally, justice was being served. After the meeting, Mr. Thompson came to talk to me. Sean, I want to thank you for your hard work and courage in exposing these crimes. On behalf of the board, I would like to offer you a promotion in addition to a public retraction to clear your name. I thanked him, feeling immense relief. Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. All I want is for the truth to be known and for our company to be able to move forward in an ethical and transparent manner. Later, Julia and I went to the building's terrace. The sun was setting, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. She held my hand and smiled. You did it, Sean. We did it. I smiled back, feeling renewed hope. Yes, we did it. And this is just the beginning. The culture of this company will change, and we will ensure it is a place where honesty and integrity are always valued. Lisa and Greg joined us, and we clinked glasses of juice that Lisa had brought. To new beginnings, Greg said, raising his glass. To new beginnings, we all repeat in unison. As I looked at my friends and thought about the future, I knew that despite the difficulties and dangers we faced, the effort had been worth it. We were ready to build a better, fairer work environment together.